As it's telling again, I just wanted to go through another one of the videos, one of the dungeons that we've done, and just kind of break it down, talk through my thoughts on how I use my defensives, kiting, the routing, and some of the pain points of the dungeon. And today we're going to be going through the Sanguine depths. And so before we get to the route, I just want to again continue to thank you all for the support that you've shown this channel with subscribing and liking the videos. And for those of you who haven't, I would really appreciate subscribing and liking this channel. It's really helping get these videos out. I really just want to share what knowledge I have to help everyone that they can, and then also learn from people who may comment and all of that as well. So thank you for supporting this channel, and let's go ahead and get into the routing of Sanguine Depths. So Sanguine Depths tends to be one of the more harder dungeons, mainly because of the bosses. The first boss, it just takes time. It can be more difficult on a tyrannical week where the orbs are just hitting hard. The second boss is definitely one of the more harder bosses in all of Mythic Plus for Shadowlands. And the third boss for tanks has a pretty hard hitting ability. The last boss, pretty easy, not too bad. And so with this route, what we're trying to do is get prideful on as many bosses as we can to help us. And I think this is generally just going to be the same for tyrannical and fortified weeks. And so to start off, most of the time what we're going to do is take these two packs together, group them up on the urn if you have a Venthyr, and that gives you the massive buff, right? And so I'm going to commit a few of my defensives here just to live. I have the benefit of having a druid with me most of the time, so we can call trees to help live there longer. And then oftentimes we'll pull all of this together as well. Now this can be kind of a crazy pack just to do together, but if you're getting this buff here, it actually makes it so much more manageable. But either way, if you take these separate, or sometimes we'll split these up too if you do that, what you're going to then do is you're going to skip through this part, which is very easy to do because this brute right here just pats around, and once he's past the spot, you can just run through and not even have to worry about any of this. And that's important for prideful timing. So after this, we'll get prideful, take it into the boss, and then go after that we'll pull this pack. Now these guys, say on a bolstering week, they do not bolster these two. They do bolster themselves, and on inspiring weeks, there generally are some in here that are inspired as well. So that can make that a little bit of a difficult pull, but not too bad. The other one we want to watch out for then is this, or what we try to do is here. This guy does patrol through here, which can make it a little sticky, and so what we'll do is we'll pull this pack inside and handle all of these. Now, there are times where you're going to want to do this separate. Think bolstering weeks where you have a lot of different health pools here. These guys out of 15 are 96k, and these guys are 232, 386, so you probably would want to pull these separate. But the reason why we do that is so that if you get this urn and you tuck in right in the corner, you can still get the buff from the urn inside here, which makes it a lot easier than just pulling on here and hoping this pat works out for you, or sometimes pulling it, right? So after that, we do get prideful here. So, if you're in here and prideful spawns, just make sure you pull the prideful out in the middle. It helps you see a lot better, and it'll help everybody else dodge it. And then you'll just come across the bridge. Oftentimes with that buff, we'll just do all of these together. But again, if there's bolstering, if there's inspiring, that you want to just do what's best there because of the health differential, or because not being able to stop cast from the oppressors, things like that. After that, if you do all of this, you're going to get prideful also on this boss, which is highly valuable. I think everybody's going to want to make sure that you have prideful into this boss because of just how difficult it can be. So you're going to come through then and you're just going to pull whatever else is there. And then you'll get prideful right after this pack, straight into the boss. Now, I wouldn't say you need prideful for Kaal, but also you don't want prideful to happen anywhere within this gauntlet. That would just be pretty hectic, and I don't think you need it. So that's the route. Again, we're just focusing on getting prideful into some of the pain point bosses, some of the really impactful bosses that hurt a lot. So let's go ahead and get into the video. All right, so like I said, we're gonna do these two packs together, so we'll get a little bit of aggro on there, and then go and grab this pack, pop our wings, pop a big defensive, group them all up on the lantern. And the only thing we need to watch out here for the DPS, and I try to call it out for them as well, is to watch out for the traps. And then also we want to have as many stuns as possible going down just to keep these skirmishers locked down, because they're going to cast Animate Weapon, which is just going to cause a little more issue, say on like necrotic weeks, where they're just going to be adding to necrotic stacks. So as much as you can keep them locked down, it's just going to help you out as a tank as well. So you can see after we get these guys down, we have a 20% damage and healing buff. And then we're going to go into this. Now this pack right here, anything with a Mist Dancer is going to be highly important for the tank to face properly. So you can see this Echoing Thrust that goes out right here. It's going to cast Echoing Thrust, and then every time it casts it, the one that it cast before as well, they're just going to keep echoing. So for us, we want to face them away from the group and then sidestep the ability, and then once it's done, stack it back right where it was to continue stacking them on top of each other and giving everybody room. Now the only thing that makes this difficult is you can see the traps on the ground from the huntsman. You're just gonna have to do your best and learn how the best place to position these so that you can keep the melee in without getting damaged by the traps and without getting damaged by Echoing Thrust. As long as you're sidestepping the ability and stacking them, it's gonna go a lot better for you. So we opt not to do both of these pulls together, just doing them separately, probably for Necrotic, because I did use my bubble, and so I wouldn't have other ways to drop it. I guess I still have Carrying Vial, but let's just do them separately. On Fortified Weeks, that slam can hurt. It did get nerfed a lot, so it's not going to hit as hard. And then this crash, anybody that's caught in the circle is going to heal the brute, and then it just does damage to anyone out of the circle. So as you can see, the brute's padding, so we can just skip right on by. So pull this tick pack. Remember, when the casting Gorge is going to give them a stacking buff that on death it will do more damage depending on how many ticks of the Engorge that they got. So we just want to lock those down as much as possible. So you can actually see here, as we're going through this pack, someone accidentally pulls one of the ticks. And as many times as we've done this dungeon, we've never accidentally pulled, so I just call this a fluke here. But what it is going to do is it's going to push our Prideful Timing forward just a little bit. As you see through the dungeon, it's just going to move it a little bit, which doesn't make it ideal, but also doesn't hurt the dungeon too much. I think the biggest problem with it is that we don't get Prideful onto the third boss, which does make it a little rough. And here too, I'm trying to make sure I have some defensives set up and ready to go because this pack is a little bit bigger and we're going to get Prideful right into it or after it, and might even in the middle of it because of that extra pack that we pulled. And so we want to make sure that we have defensives like I had, just pop a small defensive there, Ardent Defender, group these things up, and then I do have Bubble and I have Bacterium Vial, we have Trees, and so just really being prepared for all the damage that's going to be coming from this, especially on a Necrotic Week. You know, we need to plan ahead on how we're going to drop stacks and where we're going to kite, how we're going to kite if we need to, or if you can just drop them with racials or potions or other abilities. All right, so we do get the Pride right in the middle of this, which can be a little more scary if you're having a couple extra mobs, especially bolstered mobs. But they died pretty quickly after that, so it wasn't too big of a deal. And then after the Pride's done, we just go into this boss. Now this boss for us does have a very hard-hitting tank ability that we want to make sure that we are prepared for. I don't have cooldowns for every headbutt, but we just want to make sure that we're prepared with whatever we can, communicating with our healer if we're going to get hit without it. Definitely always soak the rush unless it's going to kill you. You just want to be able to help soak up that damage. And then always jump, because that's a DPS increase for you as long as you're jumping. So headbutt, I was low, but I had a heal prepped ready for it. And then Severing Smash, I will dip into this corner and then hit my orb. And because we've communicated with our group that only 2 other people get the orb, and then our healer helps with the timing on the other ones to make sure that everybody just doesn't die immediately. Now, there are strats where you can just kite the boss away from the orbs almost infinitely, and that just adds a lot of difficulty to the boss. I'd say, you know, on this level of key, it's not super necessary. You know, the damage is manageable as long as you've planned out for it. You know, we have defenses, we have darkness, we have a lot of things to deal with that. But whatever you do, just don't soak all the orbs all at once without using big defensives and having Hailing CD or something like that to save you. That's most likely just going to wipe the group. So just soak them in a staggered way. You can see there too that I knew I was low on the headbutt, so I used Ardent Defender to save me right at the end. In this run, I didn't pull the Rockbound sprites into this pack of 2 oppressors because I wasn't aware yet that they didn't bolster. This is the first time that we were doing bolstering, and I just didn't know, but now we do. So I'll continue to pull these in because they really don't do that much damage. They're not that big of a deal. You can just passively cleave them down as you focus the oppressors. These guys, however, so Wicked Oppressor is going to cast a curse that will prioritize casters, and then it will silence them if the cast gets off. So we want to have an interrupt for that. Also, you will want to interrupt Rack Soul when possible so that the dot that it leaves behind doesn't get out of hand, causing the healer to spend more time dispelling. the Dark Acolytes are all going to spam cast Dark Bolt, which targets random players, and so it does have the possibility of targeting one player, all of them, and can just one-shot them. And so we want to interrupt as many as they can. Beam from a Moonkin, stuns, disorients, all of that works, so just keep those casts minimized. Chamber Sentinel, one important thing is you just keep it faced away from the group, because that Severing Slice does cleave and it puts a dot, so just keep it faced away. And I mean, other than that, this guy's pretty easy, just move out of the swirls. Now in these packs, you're going to have 1 Grand Overseer and 2 Wicked Oppressors. You're going to want to focus the Grand Overseer down first because of their ability Overbearing Presence. What this is going to do is reduce your healing and damage done by 2%, and it stacks the longer you fight this guy. And so you want to focus on this guy while also interrupting the Wicked Oppressors. The Overseer does cast Gloom Burst, but I would put this lowest on the priority list as far as what to interrupt, because this guy cannot be stunned or CC'd in any way, and he also casts Dread Bindings, which is cast on every player, reduces their movement speed by 20%, and hurts a lot while that is on you. You can use things like Freedom, Vengeful Retreat to clear this. If you cast AMS before the cast goes off, it will also prevent you from getting this debuff. And then we have the pack with the Lantern. Now, because of Necrotic, because of a few other things, we just take this pack here and do it the same we did just with the pack before, and then after this we'll go inside and get a smaller buff, but I think it's better to live and get a smaller buff than die and get no buff. Because of that one extra mob we pulled, we do get Prideful just a little bit early. We don't get it in this room. This is where it can get a little annoying. To make sure that they're in the Lantern, you have to be all the way against the wall. And obviously I didn't do a great job but I could turn my camera and actually see a little bit better, but I just wanted to, there's nothing that's gonna kill me being in there, and so I can sacrifice a little bit of that just to make sure that they're in. So now that we have Prideful and the damage and healing buff from the urn, it would have been way more efficient to do this pack and with the pack in the next room. Not sure why we opted not to do so, but normally we easily just do both of these together because we want to make use of our Pride and the damage buff that we just got from the urn. And then we have the Custodian Javelin with the Dirt Crunchers. Now, again, I think this is one of these mobs where it doesn't look scary, but it can be, right? Because you can see right there, he did a motivational clubbing. He damages one of the Dirt Crunchers, and then they get this haste buff. And we got lucky because as they're low health, they run away. And so that guy just opted to run away. But when they're buffed, they will actually hit pretty hard. They'll do some significant take damage. So you just got to be mindful of that if that one's in your face. Now for the rest of this half circle, it's really just going to be making sure you're cycling through cooldowns because there's nothing big that I'm saving for. It is really hard to combine these packs unless you're dipping into one of the rooms and LOSing everything, because these scribes, they just cast Throw Research and it has like a 40-yard range, and so it's uninterruptible. It's hard to group them up unless you're doing that. And because of the routing to get Prideful on these bosses, we don't want to pull anything extra or what else is there, and so you just cycle through your defensives as you're going in here to keep the damage, as flat as possible. No spikes in what you're taking. So one thing to keep an eye out for is patrolling mobs. As you can see here, I was not doing a great job of that, and we actually get a pack added on top of us, which unfortunately instantly gives them a bolstering stack because one of the other mobs was low. This isn't the end of the world, obviously, but just be mindful of the patrols in this area. What does end up happening, though, is in the middle of this pack, we do get Pride. We reacted with a couple of offensive, defensive cooldowns. Have puddles on the ground from the Remnants of Doubt that cause some issues. And then again, the Throw Researchers can't really move them. You can see them just in the middle of the puddles, standing at range. It's probably one of the biggest mistakes we made in this dungeon. We do recover from it well by reacting properly, but it does cause a lot of issues. And so again, watching patrols, especially in this area, is just going to be really big for us as tanks. And you can be sure that I do a better job of this next time. But again, just be thinking on your toes about how to keep everyone safe and where you're pulling everything. And as long as you're rolling your defensives, you're going to be a lot better than just using only your active mitigation. It'll allow your healer not to spend all of their big healing CDs on you and then have them for times like that. More of the same from these guys. We just watch out for the Depths Warden. They cast Barbed Shackle, which will root a player. And that's not too bad. It does do damage, but it can be comboed with Explosive Vellum. You see that red circle on the ground, and watch our healer gets rooted and gets caught and can't do anything about it. And so it's why we want to keep Barb Shackles locked down so that that exact combo does not happen. Here's the last thing I want to say about this circle too, is the Frenzy Ghouls, again, is another one of those mobs that looks small, does a lot of damage. Again, they got nerfed, which is great. They will still do a fair amount of damage, so careful about them if you pull them. So as soon as you begin pulling, you're going to see these two swirls going around, these sin-touched animas that are going to want to rotate from the inside and want to rotate on the outside in opposite directions. If you get hit by these, it will do damage, leave behind a dot for 12 seconds, and while you have that dot on you, your haste is reduced by 25%. But as this is a curse, it can be dispelled, but obviously it's just much easier just to dodge it. So the two impactful abilities of this boss fight is the boss will summon an ad periodically, will pulse damage to the party, and then when it dies, will drop a puddle, and this puddle increases in size the longer that this ad is alive. So it's best just to kill it quick, and as soon as it dies, tanks remember to move quickly, move backwards, move out of the way of this puddle. And then Castigate will mark one player and cause them to take a lot of damage, and then anyone within 8 yards of them, anyone within that circle, is going to take damage as well. There are times in this fight where both of these abilities overlap, and that's the most impactful, biggest pain point of this fight, and so we opt to save defensives for that overlap. If somebody gets Castigate while the ad's up, they'll pop their defensive, or Shadow Meld does remove Castigate, so we utilize those things at those times. And you can see here, I got a little out of position. I did end up getting hit by the Sin-touched Anima, so this caused a little bit more stress for the party. So you can see, just not having Pride on this boss does make it just a lot harder and a lot longer. It is doable, so you just gotta plan your defensives carefully, communicate with your healers, and just position the boss properly, and it'll go down. Now here, there's two separate packs. I will go to whatever pack the patrol is closest to, just so that we can have more efficient cleave on them. Again, it is 3 oppressors, so you just watch out for the curses, but you can also use disorients and stuns to stop this as well. And so as long as the curses suppression isn't going out and you're getting as many rack souls as you can, this pack is really simple. And then this pack with an oppressor and a vestige, again, remember that these ones are the ones that drop the puddles, and so we just try to keep it stun locked, or we focus it down so that it doesn't cause that many issues for us, and then we just call interrupts on the oppressor. Alright, and then Grand Proctor Beryllia. Most impactful ability for us is this right here. Iron Spikes does a lot of damage, and so you're going to want to be prepped with either a defensive, or I just, banked up some heals there as long as I had my Shield of the Righteous on. That way I can save my defensives for other ones that I might not have that already banked up on. The boss will also cast Red of Supremacy. You can see here channeling this ability, and then little orbs will spawn around the room. These orbs are used to reduce the damage that is caused by Red of Supremacy by 20% for each orb you take. As tanks, we only need 2. We could even live with 1. Make sure that your DPS and healers are able to get more. And then right after Red of Supremacy, the boss will cast Endless Torment, where she will summon the yellow swirls around the room, but also during this time, everybody's going to be taking damage throughout this. And it's important for us to know this too, because as we're taking damage down, the next ability that's coming out is Iron Spikes, and so we have to be prepared for that. We have to do our best to stay healthy, to have resources to use on our active mitigation or healing, or have a big defensive ready as soon as this is going out. And then this is the perfect time, if you don't have those things, that you communicate to your healer that you are out of defensives and that they're going to need to help you out. And that's it. You have to be prepared a lot for that one with the Iron Spikes that are coming out. I mean, it's predictable, and when it comes out, you're going to get it right at the beginning, and then right after all the swirls come out. And that's where you really have to focus on having defensives up, or having ability to keep yourself alive, or communicating with your healer to live that fight easily. Then we just LOS these guys out here. Only thing to watch out for is, again, more traps and 1 oppressor. And so you just mark that one for the interrupt, and then you just move out of the way of traps. And it gives us a little bit more room to deal with Prideful out here, where you're not having a chance of pulling that next pack that's coming up. Now this is another pack with a Mist Dancer, and so again, these can be kind of crazy. You can opt, if you taunt the Overseer, only the Overseer and the Mist Dancer will come, and the Chamber Sentinel will stay there. And so if you need to make this pull a little bit easier, a little less hectic, do that, pull them all the way back, and then just deal with the Chamber Sentinel on its own. Again, pointing the Echoing Thrust away. Now this pack, if you're doing them all together, again, you have something else that's going to make pointing these Echoing Thrusts a lot harder. Not only do you have the craggy fixtures making it harder to stack the Echoing Thrust, a lot of mobs in these dungeons move so oddly. When you sidestep, they'll walk all the way around you or sidestep you, making it increasingly difficult to face the cleave from the Sentinel away while also stacking the Echoing Thrust properly. Since this video, I've started to pull this pack more towards the center of the room and start facing the Echoing Thrust towards the side of the room and then moving backwards where they first initially started, just to give myself a few more options of where to move. Because I had positioned myself poorly, I started to run out of the room, trying to run towards my group, risked them getting cleaved, and then I ended up going down. So this pack here is all about positioning properly. Mistakes are going to happen. It's about how you recover and all the things that you've done beforehand to help set you up so that you can make mistakes. High DPS is great to make sure that the more DPS you have, the more room for mistakes that you have as well. I would say that this gauntlet is probably one of the more challenging parts of this dungeon, especially on a fortified week. There's just a lot of different mob packs and mob densities. On top of that, you're always having 2 Gargants spawn that automatically aggro to you, not really giving you any time to breathe or take a break. And periodically you have General Kaal fighting with you in this time too. Now it's important to note that every 10% of her health, she does transition to another pack. And so you're going to want to just utilize this, kind of play it on the fly, and how it works when, if you're going to, you've killed a pack and you still have General Kaal, do you stay in DPS or down, or you just pull into another pack? And then while you have the shield as well, you can use this to just lessen the damage you take overall, but you do need to make sure that you have it for when General Kaal reaches 100 energy and then cast Gloom Squall, and so getting used to that timing and using that as well is going to be helpful. And in this gauntlet area as well, General Kaal is going to be leaping around and placing a bleed on the other players, and it places a bleed within proximity of where General Kaal lands, and so it could put bleeds on multiple people at once, which is going to just tap your healer's mana if they have to continue healing up. So if you get a bleed, use things that are going to remove that, like Racials, Tyrian Vial, and then with that there's just this healthy balance of the faster you go through this area, the less of those bleeds you're going to get and the less mana, but obviously faster pulling is going to give your healer more to do. And so there generally is this balance you have to feel out and learn how fast you're going to pull this to make it the best possible. This is probably the scariest pack out of all these in this gauntlet because of the Chamber Sentinel, the frontal cleave that he has, the craggy fissures, and then the skirmishers as well on the necrotic week makes this pack the most annoying to deal with. And then the last pack around the corner, we LOS him outside, deal with the Pride, and then we get Pride right onto the boss. So out of all the bosses in this dungeon, Kaal is definitely the easiest one. All that we really have to focus on is dodging out of the piercing blur, which is the 3 lines that spawn on the ground, and just move out of the way, don't get hit by them. And then Wicked Rush will target the DPS or the healer, and then rush towards them, and anyone in a certain area is just going to get cleaved by it as well, and then it'll leave a dot on them that will last the entire encounter. And so if you have things like pop, this will take the dot off them. It'll also allow, if you put it on them before they're about to get rushed, it'll cancel them getting rushed and they can just stay in and do more DPS. And then for us, just focusing on getting to the boss and casting the shield so that nobody dies to Gloom Squall. But overall, it's a pretty easy boss. You're just going to want to roll through your defensives again to keep your damage less spiky, make it more flat, and stay alive. But that's it. That's the dungeon. Just to recap a couple of things, the Echoing Thrusts from the Regal Mist Dancers is probably the most impactful portion of this. The one thing that we can do that help the most as tanks and how we face them. Face them away. Remember, sidestep the ability, then stand right back to where to stack the Echoing Thrusts right on top of each other. Will help all of your DPS out, your healer out, to not get hit by them. They're going in random directions. It makes that pack way easier. And then third boss with the iron spikes, we want to make sure that we're having our defensives up and really planning that, knowing the timing of that and getting comfortable with that so that you don't die from those big hits. And then the gauntlet that you go through, just focusing on Kaal's health every 10%, you know, she's going to run away, and just make sure you're having your defensives for those packs and watching out for that third or fourth pack, the 1 second from the end that has the sentinel in it. Generally tends to be the more hairier of the pulls. Yeah, this definitely wasn't one of my best dungeons for a while, and then just going through and understanding how to use my cooldowns, how some of the abilities work, having a good pathing, a good route through this has really helped. As you can see, we two-tested that even with a death on my part from, you know, bad positioning. So that utilize all of those to give yourselves the biggest room for error, and don't be upset when you do mess up. It's going to happen, and you're going to learn from it. And so, like I always try to say, enjoy the journey of learning these dungeons, and enjoy the journey of when and how you use your defensives and thinking through how you do that, and just have fun with these dungeons and learning them and get better as you progress. So I hope that helped you guys out. If you have any comments, questions, maybe any tips or tricks that you've learned as you go through these, difference in routings, those kind of things, I'd love to hear from you guys. Make sure you throw a comment down below, and don't forget to come check me out on Twitch. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday morning and Friday nights. Friday nights we do carries, and so if you want to get on that, you know, want to get 10 or an 11 done right now is what we're doing. You know, eventually we'll be pushing that up. I like that time, and we utilize that time to just run dungeons with people that we don't get to run dungeons with. You know, this game is a lot more fun when you're doing it with other people, and so that's our goal for it. We want to be able to help everybody out, but also we get to do dungeons with everybody else. So thanks guys for watching, and let me know if you have any questions or anything, but I will see you guys all next time.